My name is Marcus Thorne. I am a general in the United States Army. I have served for 38 years. I've commanded men in deserts of scorching sun and mountains of biting cold. I have 4 stars on my shoulder, not because they were given to me, but because I earned each one with sweat, with sacrifice, and with a loyalty to my country that runs deeper than my own blood. But on a Tuesday in October, none of that mattered. The day started like any other. The morning air was crisp, and the autumn leaves painted my quiet suburban street in shades of gold and red. I wasn't General Thorne that morning. I was just Marcus, a father, my daughter Maya, who is 12 and has a smile that could disarm. A battalion had a parent-teacher conference. I'd promised her I'd be there. My wife, Sarah, had an important meeting she couldn't miss, so it was my turn. I loved these moments. They were the anchor that kept my life, a life often spent in strategy rooms and on foreign soil. Grounded in what was real, I chose a comfortable gray sweater and dark slacks, no uniform, no medals, no hint of the life I lived outside this town. I was driving my car, a 5-year-old sedan, clean but unremarkable. It was the car we used for groceries, for trips to the park, for living a normal life. The conference went well. Mrs. Davison said Maya was a bright light in her class, a natural leader. I felt a surge of pride that was purer and warmer than any commendation I'd ever received. Driving away from the school, my mind was on Maya, on her future, on the simple, beautiful joy of being her dad. That's when I saw the flashing lights in my rearview mirror, blue and red, pulsing against the afternoon sun. I felt a flicker of annoyance, not alarm. I checked my speedometer. I was going the speed limit. I signaled and pulled over to the side of the road, the gravel crunching under my tires. I've been trained my whole life in de-escalation, in situational awareness. I rolled down my window, placed my hands on the steering wheel where they could be clearly seen, and waited. 2 officers got out of the patrol car. They were young. One couldn't have been much older than the soldiers I'd just sent on their first deployment. They approached my car, one on my side, one on the passenger side, their hands resting on their holsters. Their movements were tense, sharp, license and registration. The officer at my window said. His voice was flat, all business. "Of course, officer," I replied, my own voice calm and even. I've spoken to world leaders with less composure. I slowly reached for the glove compartment to get my registration. "Keep your hands where I can see them," the officer's voice barked, suddenly sharp with adrenaline. I froze, my hand hovering in the air. "My registration is in the glove compartment, sir. I'm just reaching for it. I'll get it." "You, keep your hands on the wheel." The tension was wrong. This wasn't a routine traffic stop. I could feel it in the air, a static charge of suspicion. I looked at the officer. His eyes weren't looking at me, Marcus Thorne, a man on his way home from a parent-teacher conference. They were looking at something else, a shape, a category. They were looking at a black man in a car that they had decided was a threat. "What's this about?" "Officers," I asked, keeping my tone respectful. "We had a report of a vehicle matching this description involved in a robbery a few miles back, armed robbery," the other officer said from the passenger side, his face tight. A cold knot formed in my stomach. Robbery, it was absurd. But I knew better than to argue. I stayed still, my hands gripping the wheel. They ran my plates. They ran my license. Everything would come back clean, and this would be over. A mistake, an inconvenience. But it wasn't over. "Sir, I need you to step out of the vehicle," the first officer said. His hand was off his holster now. It was on his sidearm. My heart started to beat a little faster, not with fear, not yet, but with a growing sense of disbelief. "Officer, there must be a misunderstanding. Step out of the car." Now, the politeness was gone. This was an order. I'm a man who understands orders. I slowly opened the door and stood up. I'm a tall man, 6'3", and I made sure my movements were slow, deliberate. I didn't want to give them any reason to feel threatened. The street was busy. People were slowing down in their cars to look. A woman walking her dog stopped on the sidewalk, her mouth slightly agape. "Turn around. Hands behind your back," the officer commanded. This is where the disbelief shattered and something else took its place. A cold, Creeping humiliation. Officer, you don't need to do this. I am General Marcus Thorne of the United States Army. If you just make a call, everyone's a general or a lawyer when they're caught. The second officer sneered. Turn around. The words hit me harder than a physical blow. All my life, I had built a reputation of honor, of integrity. My name, my rank, was the very core of my identity, and in an instant, it was dismissed as the lie of a common criminal. I turned around. I felt the cold, hard steel of the handcuffs close around my wrists. The click was the loudest sound I had ever heard. It was the sound of my world shifting. On its axis, it was the sound of my 38 years of service, my four stars, my very identity. Being locked away, they pushed me against the side of my car with Maya's school drawings taped to the back window. They patted me down, their hands rough and impersonal. I saw the faces of the people watching. The pity, the fear, the morbid curiosity. Someone was holding up a phone, recording. The image burned into my mind, a black man, cuffed, being pushed against his car by two white police officers on a sunny suburban street. The story wrote itself, and the truth didn't matter. You're making a serious mistake, I said, my voice low and tight, not with a threat, but with the weight of a fact they couldn't yet comprehend. They didn't listen. They put me in the back of their patrol car. The cage felt suffocating. The world outside the window was distorted, passing by in a blur of judgment. I saw my car, my safe, normal car, being left behind on the side of the road, looking as abandoned and out of place as I felt. The police station was a blur of concrete walls and the smell of disinfectant. They put me in a holding cell. The metal bench was cold. I sat there, in my gray sweater, my hands now free but still feeling the phantom grip of the cuffs. I had been in far more dangerous places. I had faced enemy fire. I had made life or death decisions for hundreds of men. But I had never, in my entire life, felt so powerless. I thought about the young soldiers I commanded. I taught them to stand tall, to represent the best of America. What would they think if they saw me now? I thought about my daughter, Maya. I had just left her school, a place of hope and learning. And now I was here, in a place that felt like the death of dignity. What would this do to her? How could I ever explain this? Hours passed. The anger I expected to feel didn't come. Instead, there was a deep, profound ache. It was the ache of a lifetime of trying to be twice as good, twice as disciplined, twice as honorable, only to be reduced to a stereotype in a matter of minutes. The uniform I wasn't wearing was more a part of me than my own skin, but without it, I was invisible. Or worse, I was a threat. Finally, they let me make a phone call. I didn't call Sarah. I couldn't. I didn't want her to hear the sound of this place in my voice. I called my aide, Captain Miller, a sharp young man who knew how to get things done. Miller, I said, my voice hoarse. I'm at the downtown precinct. There's been a situation. There was a moment of stunned silence on the other end of the line. General, sir, are you all right? What happened? Just get me a lawyer, Captain. A good one. And be discreet. Sir, the video is already everywhere. My stomach dropped. The video. The person with the cell phone. Of course, in today's world, shame travels at the speed of light. It wasn't long after that a young, tired-looking public defender came to see me. He told me I was being charged with resisting arrest and was a person of interest in an armed robbery. They had found the real robbers. Two kids in a completely different car. 20 minutes after, they had arrested me, but they weren't letting the resisting charge go. My crime, it seemed, was questioning their authority. My crime was trying to tell them who I was. The next morning, I was taken to the courthouse for arraignment. They put me in chains, ankle shackles, a chain around my waist connecting to my handcuffs. I shuffled down the hallway, the chains clinking with every step. It was a sound of utter degradation. I, who had worn the crisp, decorated uniform of a four-star general, was now in chains, being led like an animal. The courtroom was packed. News cameras were lined up in the back. Reporters scribbled furiously in their notebooks. I saw Sarah in the front row. Her face was a mask of pain and disbelief. Our eyes met, and I tried to give her a look that said, I'm okay, we'll get through this. But I don't think I was very convincing. I felt like a fraud. The judge, a man named Harris, looked down at me from his high bench with an air of weary impatience. He'd probably seen 100 men like me, or what he thought was a man like me, Marcus Thorne. He said, his voice booming artificially, through the microphone, "You are charged with resisting arrest," he droned on. My public defender stood beside me, looking overwhelmed. I felt a sense of doom settle over me. This was a machine, and I was just a cog being ground down by its gears. The truth didn't matter. My service didn't matter. My honor didn't matter. Here, in this room, I was just a case number dot, and then something happened that changed everything. The heavy doors at the back of the courtroom swung open. Two serious-looking men in dark suits, the kind you see in movies, stepped inside. They stood at attention, and then a third man walked in between them. He was a man I knew well, a man I had served with in the mountains of Afghanistan, a man whose life I had once been credited with saving. Though he had saved just as many of my own men with his decisive leadership, he was no longer in the military, but he was still serving our country at the very highest level. It was Robert Maxwell, the Secretary of Defense. A ripple went through the courtroom. Whispers erupted. The reporters leaned forward, their eyes wide. The judge stopped mid-sentence, his mouth hanging open. Sarah gasped. Secretary Maxwell walked down the central aisle with a purpose and authority that silenced the entire room. He didn't look at the press. He didn't look at the judge. His eyes were fixed on me. In his gaze, I saw not pity, but a furious, protective loyalty. He stopped right in front of the bar that separated the gallery from the court. He looked at the bailiff who moved to intercept him. The bailiff froze, as if he'd hit an invisible wall. "Your Honor," Secretary Maxwell said, his voice calm but carrying the undeniable weight of command. It was a voice that had briefed presidents and moved armies. "My name is Robert Maxwell. I am the Secretary of Defense of the United States." Judge Harris, looking utterly bewildered, stammered, "Mr. Secretary, what is the meaning of this? This is a local court proceeding." "I'm aware of that, Your Honor," Maxwell said, his eyes finally shifting to the judge. His gaze was like ice. "I am here for the man you have in chains. I am here for General Marcus Thorne." He said my name, my full rank and name, and the words echoed in the silent room. He then turned his eyes back to me, and for the first time in 24 hours, I felt like someone was actually seeing me. "Your Honor," Maxwell continued, his voice rising with a controlled, righteous anger, "you have a man in your courtroom who has been awarded the Distinguished Service Cross, the Silver Star, the Bronze Star for Valor. You have a man who has led soldiers in 3 different wars, who has dedicated nearly 4 decades of his life to the defense of this nation and the very laws you are sworn to uphold." He took a step forward, his presence seeming to fill the entire space. "Yesterday, this man was on his way home from his daughter's school. He was not a suspect. He was a father. He was stopped, and he was humiliated. He was treated not as a citizen, and certainly not as the national hero that he is, but as a threat. Why, you tell me?" "Your Honor, because I look at him, and I don't see a threat. I see the man who pulled my wounded body from a downed Black Hawk helicopter while under heavy enemy fire. I see the man who has sacrificed more for this country than anyone in this room. I see the best of us." He paused, letting his words hang in the air. The silence was absolute. The only sound was the frantic scratching of pens on paper from the press row. "You have put him in chains," Maxwell said, his voice now dropping to a low, dangerous growl. "You have put chains on a man who has spent his entire life working to keep this country free. The absurdity would be laughable if it were not such a profound and disgusting tragedy. This isn't just an insult to the man, it's an insult to the uniform he represents and the nation he serves." He looked directly at Judge Harris, who had gone pale. "This proceeding is a disgrace. The charges are a disgrace. The treatment of this man is a stain on our justice system. I am not here today to ask you to do the right thing. I am here to demand it. Release him, now, and you will issue a formal, public apology to General Thorne and to his family for what you and your city's police force have put them through." The Secretary of Defense stood there, an unmovable force, He was not just a powerful man. He was my friend, my brother in arms, and in that moment, he was my rescuer. Judge Harris was completely and utterly shocked. He stared at Secretary Maxwell, then at me, then back at Maxwell. He looked at the sea of reporters. He could see his career, his reputation, flashing before his eyes. He fumbled with his papers, his judicial authority completely stripped away. The charges against General Thorne are dismissed, he stammered out, his voice barely a squeak. With prejudice, the court offers its deepest apologies. He banged his gavel weakly, a hollow sound in the monumental silence. Bailiff. Remove his restraints. A bailiff, his hands trembling slightly, came forward with a key. As the locks on my ankles and wrists clicked open, the sound was the opposite of the one I had heard the day before. It was the sound of freedom, of vindication. As soon as the chains fell away, Sarah rushed to me, throwing her arms around me. I held her tight, burying my face in her shoulder, and for the first time, I let the full weight of it all hit me. The humiliation, the fear, the rage, the profound gratitude. I walked out of that courtroom a free man, with Secretary Maxwell at one side and Sarah on the other. The cameras flashed, but this time, it felt different. It wasn't the light of shame, it was the light of the truth coming out. Later that evening, Rob's Secretary Maxwell came to my house. We sat in my study, the two of us, no longer a general and a secretary, but just Marcus and Rob. I'm sorry you had to do that. Rob, I said, my voice quiet. Don't you dare be sorry, he said, his expression serious. I was honored to do it. They messed with the wrong man, Marcus. They messed with my family. We sat in silence for a while, the unspoken bond between soldiers filling the space. You know, I said finally, looking out the window at the peaceful night. For 38 years I fought for this country. I believed in it, in the idea of it. And yesterday, for a few hours, I felt like my country didn't believe in me. It's not the country that failed you, Marcus, he said softly. It's people, and people can be corrected. Sometimes, they just need to be reminded of what's right. He was right, but something inside me had changed. The scars from those handcuffs were not on my wrists, they were on my soul. I had been reminded that I live in two worlds. In one, I am General Thorne, a respected leader. In the other, I am a black man, a potential suspect. My rank, my honor, my service, it could all be stripped away in an instant, leaving only the color of my skin. The next day, my story was on the front page of every newspaper. I was no longer just a general. I was a symbol, and I knew my fight wasn't over. I had fought for my country on foreign soil for most of my life. Now, I realized there was a different kind of battle to be fought right here, at home. A battle for understanding, for dignity, for the simple truth that a man's character should matter more than his color. And as I stood with my wife and daughter in the home I had fought so hard to protect, I knew, with a certainty that settled deep in my bones, that this was a battle I was ready to fight.